Hello and welcome to MacGyver's Grant Public Library's Storytime Tuesday. This month at MacGyver's Grant Public Library we are doing inventory. Have you ever heard a grown-up talk about inventory? A lot of times you talk about counting things and making sure they're all in the right place, and that is something that we do every year here at the library to help take care of your books, because all these books on these shelves in our library, they belong to you. Isn't that wonderful? Did you know that? I just get to read them and play with them and take care of them. And one of the ways that we take care of them is by counting them and seeing who checks out our books. And sometimes really wonderful books sit on the shelf for a long time and nobody checks them out. They just kind of get lost in there. And they're really wonderful books, but if they haven't been checked out for a while, we have to do what we call weed them. Just like a garden, when you pull weeds up so that you've got enough room for your flowers, we have to pull some books off the shelf so that we have room for the new ones that we're buying. Every once in a while, when we pull books to take out of our collection, which we then usually donate to somebody, or we might put them in the book sale that raises money for the Friends of the Library, when that happens, sometimes we see some that we just don't want to let go of. So Miss Vanessa is going to read you this one today. It is called When I Wished I Was Alone, and it was written and illustrated by Dave Cutler. This book reminds me of one of my very favorite books, which is a very popular book here in the library called Where the Wild Things Are. So we're going to read both of those two books today. These ones up here above me are other ones that we're going to save from our weeding pile, and they're going to go back into the collection. I'm going to tell you about those after we read these two so that you can know those titles and maybe you can save them. If you check them out and read them and enjoy them, you can bring them back, and then the next time we do inventory, it'll say, oh, this book was just checked out. You should keep this one. So let's see if we can save these 4 books from being weeded at the library. This is, like I said, When I Wished I Was Alone, written and illustrated by Dave Cutler. So he wrote the words, he's the author, and he drew the pictures, so he's the illustrator. And look at how little our friend looks in this picture. Look how big the world is around him, and he just wants to be alone. Have you ever felt that way? I just want to be alone. This book was published by GreyCore Kids. And there's another picture of him just alone. I don't know if I'd want to be alone there, floating in the sky on a piece of land. What do you think? Okay. Once, when I was a little child, I was very angry at my family. I told them that I didn't love them. I told them that I wished I never had a family and I could always be alone. I ran into my room and I fell asleep on my bed. Are those kind words to say to your family? Let's talk about that just for a moment. There he is running in his room. Look, his room's a little messy. He's angry. Oh my goodness, he's so angry. And sometimes when we're angry, we say things that we don't mean. Do you think he loves his family? I bet he does. Do you think he's glad he has them? I bet he is. But at that moment, right then, he was very mad and he said something that was very hurtful to his family. And he went into his room and he fell fast asleep, because sometimes being mad makes you very tired, doesn't it? Sometimes being tired makes you very mad. You never know. When I woke, I was lying down in a patch of cool grass. All I could see around me was an endless blue sky. After I stood up, I realized I was now on a very small island. Even more surprising was that the little island was floating in the middle of the sky. There he is, waking up in that cool grass, and I bet you we're going to see a picture like that first one we just talked about. He's on a little island all by himself, floating in the middle of the big sky. He's alone. I was alone. My wish had come true. I stood proudly on my new island. I felt as though I was on top of the world. No one to bother me, no one to tell me what to do, and no one to hurt my feelings. Just me, my island, and the sky. It was beautiful. He looks happy there, doesn't he? He looks proud, doesn't he? Let's see what happens. I watched as the moon rose into the sky, and I laughed as the stars and planets danced all around me. I had never been so close to the heavens. Saturn floated by and was so near that I thought I could reach out and touch its rings. When I first looked at that, I thought this was a sunset. But look, it's Saturn. Look how close he is to Saturn on his island that's floating in the sky. Oh, he's trying to touch the rings. He has a lot to discover and explore in his new place. The nighttime sky began to glow. Its purple color started turning warm blue, and dancing stars became beautiful white birds that welcomed me into a new day. And there you can see the transition from the night sky and the stars to the sky turning blue and lighter blue, and those stars becoming birds. That's a very pretty picture, isn't it? I like this book. I don't like what he said to his family. Sometimes you say things you don't mean. I sat on my island all alone for what seemed like a very long time. I saw many moons rise and many moons set. Although I enjoyed being alone, after a while, I began to miss my family. I missed my mother's kisses and my father's hugs. I even missed my little sister. But as I looked around, it seemed as though there was no way to get back home. Oh, what does he see in the sky? Can you see his mother and his father and his little sister and the planets? And then look at his face. How does he feel? What do you think he feels with a face like that? I think he's lonely. The moon and stars and planets did their dance for me, but without my family to share it with, I no longer enjoyed their show. During the day, the sun kept me warm and the birds flew by to say hello, but without anyone to share it with, it didn't seem as special. I missed my family very, very much. That's a pretty picture, isn't it? I felt very sad. My sadness turned to sorrow. I didn't mean it when I told my family that I no longer loved them. I didn't mean it when I told them that I wanted always to be alone. One morning, the birds that visited each day came by and started dropping little pieces of shiny, silvery string all around me. I caught one to look at, but it was not very long, so I let it fall to the ground. It's pretty, isn't it? I wonder why they're dropping those strings. Can you think of something? You think of a reason they might be dropping strings? Let's see. A little later, more birds flew by. Each dropped a piece of silvery string onto my island. Soon there was a pile of string almost as big as I was. I thought that perhaps I could tie them together to make a long rope and then climb it back home. But I didn't know which way to climb the rope, up or down or side to side. How was I ever going to get back home? That is a lot of string. The birds played and chirped overhead, but I was too sad to enjoy their show. I didn't even notice that the day had turned to night. As the last bird flew by, I finally looked up to see the stars. But tonight, the stars were different. They danced a new dance, one I had not seen before. What did those stars do? What did they make? Can you tell me what shape that is? What shape is that right there? What is that? It's a heart. What's a heart stand for? When you see a heart, what does it make you think of? Love, doesn't it? I think the birds and the stars are taking care of this little boy who lives on this island all by himself now. It was beautiful. As the stars danced, silvery strings which lay in the pile next to me began to rise up into the sky. I watched in amazement as each of the strings attached to a star and floated above my hand. I love that picture. Isn't that beautiful? Would you like to hold on to stars like that, like they're balloons? Would you like to do that? I would like to do that. I grabbed onto the ends of the strings, and suddenly I was lifted up and away from my island. We began to float into the dark blue sky. Look at that. Let you see it really close. Look at the stars. He has had such an adventure, hasn't he? We floated for some time until we came upon a huge white cloud. Everything around me turned as white as a blank piece of paper. I could no longer see the stars or the moon, only white everywhere I looked. Looks like white paper. There he is, holding, you can see the strings barely. Look at all that white around him. I can see some words, like a white piece of paper. Then, with a sudden bump, I felt as though I had landed on something soft and familiar. The white cloud faded away, as did the silver strings in my hand. I found myself back in my bedroom, sitting on my bed. I was home again. I ran to tell my family what had happened, but most of all, I ran to tell them that I loved them. And that is the end of that book. Sometimes when we get angry, we might say something that we don't mean. We might say, I don't even like you, but that's not a very nice thing to say. Sometimes we need to kind of stop and think before we say words that might hurt somebody else, but sometimes we do say things that hurt other people. Can you imagine if you said it and then you were gone and you couldn't take it back? I'm so glad that this little boy got to go back to his family. This book reminds me a lot of Where the Wild Things Are, because in Where the Wild Things Are, there's a little boy who gets mad and doesn't want to be around his family in that one too. Where the Wild Things Are, Stories and Pictures by Maurice Sendak. This book is a classic book. It is a Caldecott Medal winner, which means that the illustrations won a wonderful prize, and it's just something that we read a lot over and over because we like it so very much. Whenever I read this book, I always think of a really good friend of mine named Nancy West because she reads this book really well. So, this book was published by Harper Collins, and there are some pictures. Let's find out what happens in Where the Wild Things Are. The night Max wore his wolf suit and made mischief of one kind, oh my, or another. Looks like Max is a little wound up. His mother called him a wild thing, and Max said, "I'll eat you up." So he was sent to bed without eating anything. Would you say, "I'll eat you up" to your mama? Don't say it. That very night in Max's room, a forest grew. Look at that room. Look at the trees in his room. He's still in his wolf suit. And grew. And grew until his ceiling hung with vines and walls became the world all around. I don't see his bedroom anymore. Do you see his bedroom anymore? An ocean tumbled by with a private boat for Max, and he sailed off through night and day. And in and out of weeks and almost over a year to where the wild things are. Look at the wild thing. And he's still in his wolf suit. Is he going to go where the wild things are because his mother called him a wild thing? And when he came to the place where the wild things are, they roared their terrible roars, and they gnashed their terrible teeth, and they rolled their terrible eyes, and they showed their terrible claws. Oh my goodness. There's Max in his boat. Till Max said, "Be still," and tamed them with the magic trick of staring into all their yellow eyes without blinking once. And they were frightened, and they called him the most wild thing of all. They were scared of Max. And they made him king of all wild things. Look at his crown. I like his crown. And they're all bowing to him, aren't they? "And now," cried Max, "let the wild rumpus start." What is a rumpus? What does it look like a rumpus is? Can you tell what are the wild things doing? Oh, I see Max's mouth is open really wide. I think he's yelling. And I see them jumping and dancing around. Looks like they're being wild. A rumpus must be like a wild party. And they're hanging from the trees, swinging through that forest. Let's see what else they're doing. And he's riding the wild things as they dance through. "Now stop," Max said, and sent the wild things off to bed without their supper. And Max, the king of all the wild things, was lonely, and he wanted to be where somebody loved him best of all. There they are, going to bed without their supper. I bet they're hungry. And there's poor, lonely Max. Then all around from far away across the world, he smelled good things to eat. So he gave up being king of where the wild things are. Where do you think he might go where there might be good things to eat? But the wild things cried, "Oh, please don't go. We'll eat you up. We love you so." And Max said, "No." The wild things roared their terrible roars, and they gnashed their terrible teeth, and they rolled their terrible eyes, and they showed their terrible claws. But Max stepped into his private boat, and he waved goodbye. He said, "We'll eat you up. We love you so." Can you wave goodbye to the wild things? And he sailed back over a year and in and out of weeks and through a day. I love the pictures in this book. And into the night of his very own room, where he found his supper waiting for him. Because he was where somebody loved him most of all. Can't get to the next page. And it was still hot. So his mama, who loved him most of all and told him he couldn't talk to her that way, made him some good warm dinner, didn't she? I like that book. So what is the same about these two books? What is the same? Oh, they both had a little boy who got mad and went up to his room and said some stuff. And then went on a wild adventure where he was alone, like he thought he wanted to be. But who did he miss? And who do you think you would miss if you had that same adventure? You might talk about that with your family. Tell them what you love about them. Sometimes we do want to be alone. And we can be alone without saying ugly things to our mama or our family. But sometimes it's a good reminder of what's waiting for us when we get back there. I enjoy these books. I hope that you'll check out these others. This one's called Flotsam. It's by David Wisner. Flotsam is something that comes up on the ocean with the waves. And it's a whole story in only pictures. It's such a good book, and the pictures are so beautiful. And I would like it if you would check out this book called Flotsam. And then maybe you write a story from the pictures. And you can share that with me if you wanted to. You can either private message me here on Facebook, or you can send it to Vanessa at MacIvers Grant Public Library. And we've got an ongoing writing contest here. So if you send in a story, you might win a prize. This book is called An Angel Just Like Me, and it's by Mary Hoffman. And I really don't want this book to go. We need to hold on to this book. Isn't it beautiful? Let's look at some of the pictures inside. The pictures are by Cornelius Van Wright and Ying Wahoo. Look at how detailed these pictures are. It's a Christmas book. So we are just done with Christmas, aren't we? Maybe you could just extend the holiday just a little to read this wonderful book. Aren't the illustrations beautiful? And this book is called Thunder Rose, and it's written by Jardine Nolan and illustrated by Kadir Nelson. And this is a tall tale. So if you read this book, you can also send me a story of a tall tale that you write. Tall tale means a legend. It's kind of exaggerated sometimes, like Paul Bunyan. You could write that. And if you wanted to write a story from Angel Just Like Me, you could send that in. You might win a prize. But for sure, we will save some wonderful books. Okay, this was a very long story time. Thank you for hanging in there with me. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week. Come see us. Bye-bye.